Hey my loves, welcome back. Or if we haven't met, hi, I'm Ty. Today we're looking at the moon card in the tarot. I want to talk a bit about how sexism might have influenced some of the common interpretations of this card, as well as some deities that I personally associate with the moon card, and how it helps us to access our intuition and instinct. This is a response to the tag Top Tarot Trumps started by Marsha of Musings by Marsha, so I'll be showing you 5 of my favourite moon cards from different decks. So let's get started. I think it wouldn't be me if I didn't start here. So yes, this is an oracle card and not a tarot card, but there is just this one, I promise. So this is from the Greek mythology reading cards, and it is, of course, Artemis, because I couldn't do a video on the moon card without featuring Artemis, one of the main moon deities from ancient Greece. And the reason I've put this one first is that in this deck, Artemis is given the title of Goddess of Light. And I think this is pretty important when it comes to the moon card, because to me, the moon is a card of light, not of darkness. And I think there are a lot of traditional interpretations that I dislike for that reason. So as I see it, I think quite often we're very tempted to think of things in polarities or binaries, kind of black and white thinking. So I think the thought process that has gone on here is we think of sun, moon, light, dark. But what happens with that is that then the sun has become commonly known as the card of light, which goes along with things like truth, positivity, happiness, good outcomes. And meanwhile, the moon is seen as the card of darkness, which is unpredictability, mystery, confusion, and even madness. I think the unpredictability is my favorite one because, you guys, the moon is on a cycle. Like, just because something changes frequently doesn't mean that it's unpredictable. And the cycle has been the same for a while now. Like, who would truly look at something that changes on a regular cycle and think unpredictable, mad, hysterical even? Yeah, you see where I'm going with this. It's a bit bloody convenient that the sun is traditional masculine and the moon is traditional feminine, isn't it? The sun is bright and lovely and all things good, and the moon is dark and unpredictable and confusing. So I think this is just another place where misogyny might have had a little bit of an impact. Thankfully, it seems like I'm not the only one who's noticed that. When I was researching for this video, there were quite a few authors I read who also pushed back against some of those interpretations of the moon card, because there is that misogynistic undertone. Which is a real relief to see, because I think we should always consider how our symbols and our interpretations came to have the meaning that they do, and I think there's no harm in updating them. So coming back to Artemis, I love that here they call her the goddess of light because the moon is a light source. So just because it's different than the sun doesn't make it negative or somehow inferior. The moon is a reflective light source, and to me that sounds like something that's worth celebrating, because isn't reflection really necessary for all of us at times? Like, I think reflection is sacred. The light of the moon is different in strength every night, and some nights it is very dim. But that's only a problem if you're reliant on just eyesight. And to me, that is really the metaphor that's at the heart of the moon card. So to explain what I mean, imagine the world before electricity. In the daylight, most of us humans would go about our little lives relying on our eyesight the most out of all of our physical senses. But at night, we can't rely on our vision alone. So moonlight does illuminate things, but not in the same way as sunlight. We have different kind of shapes and shadows and outlines that form. So while it's very beautiful, it means we can't completely assess our environment based on just our eyesight. But that is not necessarily a bad thing. If you've ever been walking outdoors at night somewhere without streetlights, you know how, because you can't necessarily see exactly where you're going, it feels like your other senses get heightened. You can hear every single twig that breaks, and you can feel the wind change when you feel it on your skin. That type of thing. Well, kind of extend that metaphor out to our silly little brains. In day-to-day life, we're mostly in the daylight or the sunlight. We're thinking our way through everything with our conscious mind, our conscious thoughts, our thought processes, our intellect. But in a moon card type situation, we're not in that same daylight of our usual life. Something big happened with the tower. We found some hope with the star, but we're still in the dark, not knowing exactly the way forward, how to move towards that hope. And as much as we might try to intellectualize our way through, remember that in this metaphor, our mind is our eyes, and here in the moonlight, we need other senses to be able to navigate with. So that's where instinct and intuition come to the fore. The moon card in the tarot is that time when we shut off the intellect and the conscious mind because it allows us to be able to hear and connect with our other selves, those like deep animalistic or intuitive selves. Because quite often those parts are suppressed. And they contain a lot of wisdom and a lot of guidance. So to me, accessing that intuition and instinct, that's a type of light, that's a type of illumination. It's an illumination of the inner selves that we really don't get in sunny conditions. And I think Artemis is a beautiful companion for this part of the journey. Whew. So, that all said, here is our first tarot card. It's from the Renaissance Tarot. I really love this deck, but a lot of the action, kind of story-wise in each of the cards, happens in the borders, which is a little bit of a shame because obviously it's such a small part of the card, a little bit hard to see. But basically on this card, we have on the main part, these two ladies practicing music. And then up in the top left and right corners, we have a stag and we have Artemis with a hunting dog. So the stag represents Actaeon, who famously looked at Artemis while she was bathing. And because Artemis is one of the virgin goddesses, in all of the myths about her, she's very chaste. And so to punish this man for looking at her while she was bathing, she turned him into a stag. And then his own hunting dogs ate him. Don't be a peeping Tom, the end. Love that. The point of that story is to illustrate Artemis' role as a protector of girls and unmarried women. I guess once you're married, your hair is a problem. Anyway, there's a little circular temple in the background as well, which was a really common shape for temples to goddesses back in the day. And I also think it's a little bit cute that the instrument being played on this card is a stringed instrument. Because as we know, Apollo, the sun god, rules over stringed instruments, and Artemis is his sister. So it sort of brings in that interplay between sun and moon. It's a reminder that, in this case, literally, they are related. This next card is from the deck This Might Hurt, and it's a relatively recent acquisition for me. I got this one pretty recently, but the moon card really strikes a chord for me. I think it really illustrates what I was saying earlier about that wild side, that instinct and intuition that in some ways it can only come out fully in the dark. The artist for this deck says that the wolf masks in this card represent our animal selves, and the guidebook also talks a bit about intuition that alerts us to danger. You know, like the kind of intuition that tells you when a person is lying to you or that you're in a dangerous situation, which again, that's a really beautiful blend of intuition and instinct that's really valuable. The moody atmosphere and the dark color scheme is something that I love about this card. If you've seen any of my videos in this series, then you know that's a little bit my taste, my aesthetic. So this one's really right up my alley. And you could get some really fun interpretations from this card as well, I think. Like just imagine these two out doing some wild rituals out by the seaside at night under that glorious full moon, bearing the animal self with someone that you trust deeply, connecting to the elements, summoning fuck knows what. It's exactly what the doctor ordered. And next we have, of course, Fyodor Pavlov Tarot. This moon reminds me of illustrations from my youth. You know those navy background star and moon patterns that was on everything? Sometimes there was a sun as well, and the sun and the moon often had faces, and it was like a whole thing. Extremely popular in interior design and stationery, from what I recall. So it's a little bit nostalgic for me. The sort of canine creature in this card is a werewolf that was also on the strength card that's in this deck. And so it represents a tension between the animalistic and the domesticated selves. The owl is here representing wisdom, which is a very universal kind of symbolism. I think to a lot of people, the owl represents wisdom. And I just think this card is really beautifully illustrated. And last, but truly in no way least, we have the moon from the Mythic Tarot. I very nearly didn't include this one because I sort of thought I already have one goddess in here, and I talked quite a bit about Artemis. Maybe just pick a simple card to finish out the 5 and call it a day. Yeah, no. I have one with Hecate on there, so she needs to be included. This card shows Hecate, who is another Greek goddess associated with the moon. She's a very different goddess to Artemis, but they do have a few things in common. One of those things is they're both associated with childbirth and the protection of women, but they're also both associated with dogs, which is also a perfect fit for the moon card, which we know often has a dog and a wolf on it. So this artist has chosen to show Kerberos here, which is the 3-headed dog of the underworld. And that's a nice stylistic choice, I think, because they've also depicted Hecate in triplicate. So we have this kind of nice mirroring between the 3 heads on both the figures in this card. And Hecate is associated with the underworld, so having her alongside a hellhound is fair enough. But I think what she's probably most commonly associated with is magic and witchcraft. And I think that is also a really wonderful thing to tie to the moon card. Because thinking again about accessing that intuition or instinct, what better way than through magic for that? Like journeying in whatever way that you do in your particular spiritual tradition is extremely just moon coded to me. Whether we're talking about trance work, meditation, astral projection, communing with deities, divination, they're all ways that we can access those two eyes, the instinct and the intuition. And I think Hecate perfectly symbolizes this. So these have been my 5 favorite moon cards. Let me know if we share any favorites. Thank you again, Marsha, for starting this tag. Go check out her series if you haven't. You'll definitely learn something. If you enjoyed this video, I would love a like, and feel free to subscribe if you're not already. If you are, thanks. That's very cool of you. Take care, and I will see you in the next one.